talk,
identity,
and access
management.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going?
I'm good. Guess what today is?
Your birthday.
It's not my birthday, but you're close.
Why don't you take the honors? Go ahead.
I'll
Tell
take
everybody
that.
what's going on.
So today is the 1 year birthday. We're 1 year old of the Identity at the Center podcast. We're going to call it this week. This show is the first year is under our belt, and there we are. So cue the happy birthday music, which I think is in the public domain, so we don't want to get a copyright strike anywhere, but light the candles, or well, I guess you say light the candle, right? It's one candle for 1 year old. So
Yeah.
congratulations, we did it.
We encourage people not to call our baby ugly.
It certainly is started off as an ugly baby. I like to think we've gotten better over the last year, considering neither of us knew what we were doing getting into this. We just decided, what the heck, let's just go for it and see how it goes.
Sometimes you just have to get off the couch and do something. And you had been talking about doing a podcast for years, and yeah, we should do that someday. I agree. And then about a year ago, we said, let's just do it. What the heck? It's free. So, of course, as you go into it, you realize it's free until you start saying, okay, our audio quality is not that great. We need to buy new equipment. Oh, we need a website. Oh, and yada, 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 on and on. You spend some money, but nothing, not life-changing money. And it's been, the biggest joy I get out of the podcast is really the feedback from people who listen. I mean, I've heard people say it's the best identity management podcast, so I'm just going to go with that. It's the best one.
Is that Jim's dad saying that?
Yeah, that might have been the Jay Stedman account.
Right. It's the best identity podcast that airs once a week. That starts with identity.
Well, you know what? We were kind of asking people to go out and leave us reviews from the very beginning, and we got one review. I think it was almost a year ago, and the person said, I like this podcast. It helps me fall asleep.
Yeah, solid 69 out of 5, which, okay, I guess whatever makes sense, but we'll take it. It's a 5-star review.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today is going to be a little bit different, I think, from just a kind of a normal flow. Don't really have any specific IAM topic. We were kind of talk about the show itself and, celebrate our 1 year birthday and talk about what's coming up in the future. And also, some new things are going to be kind of added to the show as different ways you can interact with us. So I guess why don't we start there? Hopefully by the time you listen to this, you'll notice that we have a brand new website at identityatthecenter.com. It used to link to where we would publish a show on anchor.fm, which is part of Spotify, and it works fine. And we're still using that service, but decided it was time to get a little more professional with the show. So we've created a new website. Again, it's identityatthecenter.com. It's got links where you can listen to the show and all the different services, or at least I should say the major services, things like Apple and Spotify and try to think what else there, Google, right? But we're on most of the major services at this point. Has a link to our Twitter account, which is at IDAC Podcast, IDAC Podcast. And like to get people out there to follow, because I'd like to use that to conduct polls, right? And to kind of share different things that are going on. And that's one thing I think that we have not been really good at, is the social aspect of the show, which is really important, I think, in this day and age. And that seems to be a common area. So I think we're going to focus on the Twitter side of things. And like I said, if we get some followers out there, maybe throw out, a question of the week and incorporate that into some of our future shows.
That's a great point. And we have been pretty active on LinkedIn, especially through only through our personal accounts, and trying to get anybody who's been a guest on the show to kind of, get it out to their following, but some kind of consistent message, because a lot of times when we tell people, yeah, we do a show, again, we have over 50 episodes at this point. They're, really, I didn't know about that. It's like,
Mm.
darn it, like it's all about getting the word out there, because I think there are a lot of people who are hungry for this kind of content. But Jeff, I did want to point out one thing. So this new website, I mean, people who don't know you don't know that you're a gadget guy. So for everybody, I'm gonna, I've known Jeff. We've been friends now for like 5 years and coworkers. And Jeff has like every version of like virtual reality. He usually has 2 or 3 phones. I don't even buy new stuff. I just buy Jeff's old stuff. So like I don't go out and get the newest iPhone. I just buy one revision behind, and I buy it from Jeff, and he goes out and gets a new phone. But also when it comes to any kind of like, new website or new, like a new app online like Lucidchart, I usually hear about it from Jeff. When it comes to putting together all of our client deliverables and making them look good, I don't even try anymore. I just basically build diagrams, and I build my slides in text, and then Jeff magically turns them into something that looks, like it's from the future. And I think I want to give you a big, huge pat on the back here with the website. It actually looks a little scary. It looks like it was taken over by, it looks like the intro to a movie called Terminator 4. Like yeah, like AI takes over the world.
Well, it is, right? So, I appreciate all that. That's very nice of you to say. Just figured it was time to, put something together, and hopefully people like it. Can't say that it'll stay the same forever. I think change is good. Refresh here and there, but wanted something that was, a little bit minimal, not over the top, not commercial heavy. And I think that's one of the things that I know you and I strive quite a bit, is to not turn this into an infomercial for any specific product or service or anything like that. We didn't really mention the company that we work for very much, if at all. And you really have to kind of look for instances of that. And I think that's the way that, you and I would like to keep it, for the foreseeable future, and have it be more vendor neutral, a little more agnostic, and really get to the meat and potatoes of things before we get to the dessert. So you're the meat and potatoes when it comes to the content, and I'm the chocolate drizzle that goes on top. How about that?
Chocolate drizzle and meat and potatoes. That sounds delicious.
I think that covers all the food groups.
Yeah, but I also wanted to mention, so, not to pump what we do, but this is kind of the approach that you and I take with the consulting that we do. Even though our company is partners with X, Y, and Z company, the approach that we take when we're putting together one of our clients' strategies is we put ourselves in their shoes, and we truly take the mindset of, what would I do if I were you? I'm building the strategy for myself. In other words, if I was the IAM program manager for that company, here's what my strategy would be. And so a lot of times, I'd say, 9 times out of 10, our clients are like, you hit the nail on the head. And that 1 time out of 10, it's like we work back and forth until we get it, because usually it's not a content issue. It's more, a prioritization issue or a messaging issue. And once we get that squared away, so again, even like the consulting we do is not an infomercial. I could not, we charge money for our consulting services. So I could not use it as like some kind of sales tool. We go in, we talk to our clients, and we say, we do vendor agnostic consulting, and it's our integrity on the line. We can't go in there and actually, oh, we're not vendor agnostic, we're actually pitching a product. No, we don't do that. And so that was kind of the vision behind the podcast as well. And you and I are both, I think, on the same page as that on that front. As right off the bat, we wanted something that was educational and informational for our listeners, with the mindset that, the kind of listeners we wanted to draw in were, well, anybody who's interested in IAM, but especially practitioners, people who've walked a similar path as us, have worked for a company or do consulting in the IAM space, and or work for a company as an IAM program manager, or really what lights my fire is the up and coming person who's just gotten into IAM within the last few years and is trying to build a career, and putting content out there that they can start to understand, that, and not that they're going to agree with every point of view that we have, but that they can understand that these are the issues that are hot and that people are thinking about, and hot topics, and start to formulate their own perspective on that.
Yeah. Plus, we can stick it to the man.
Yeah. We've done
Well,
that.
I think about it as like, this is, if I was going to provide advice or come up with a strategy or, build a podcast, whatever it may be, I would do it in the way that I would want to hear it. Right. So that's pretty much the approach I think that we've taken. It's, here's what we would do. And, we try to come up with ways we think they're interesting. And, having been on the enterprise side for such a long time, you get jaded to vendors and their sales pitches, and it's like, okay, yeah, whatever. What are you trying to sell me? Right. So, I think that's the approach and the mindset that really kind of started this, was like, we're not trying to sell anything, right? Let's just get information out there. Let's have a conversation around identity. There seems to be a little bit of a void out there where, there's not a lot of podcasts in this area. And, maybe we can get it out there and help some folks and go from there. So, I think that was pretty much it. So I think that's why it's helpful too, when people leave reviews and ratings for us on whatever service you're listening, is please do that, because that helps the show, helps get the audience to be bigger, and feel free to share it with folks that you think might get some benefit, because the bigger the show, it helps Jim and I maintain the momentum with it, helps us get different guests and have different topics, and there's a lot of things we'd like to do, and to do that, the bigger the audience we have, the better, and just helps us all become smarter, because part of the audience is such a big part of it, because we want suggestions and feedback from people who are listening. What is it that's important to you? And we know that we've done a few shows that have been listener suggestions. For example, we just did one recently on role mining that came from listener Andrew out there. So and we've done other ones in the past as well, and we want to put content out there that you find interesting, right? Things that'll help you in your day job. So if you're struggling with an issue or you're curious about something, send it on over to us, right? Go to identityatthecenter.com. There's a contact button at the top. You can drop a quick note, and it'll come to us, and we can take a look at it and see how best we can address it, and try to help folks out there. And I can't, I definitely won't profess to be an expert in everything. So if there's something out there that I'm not familiar with, we'll go out and find a guest that can talk about it, do the research to at least educate, and hopefully bring back something to the table that people find of value.
Yeah, and I can speak to that last point that you made there, Jeff, in terms of areas that we're not experts in. So two of those that we've talked about a few times now have been FIDO and open banking. And it's like, these are areas that, we could probably read a few articles online and try to piece together a show, but that's never been our way. And what we'd rather do is try to pull in a guest who has expertise on those areas, who focuses on that. FedRAMP is another area that, our goal would be to get to have some people on the show who live and breathe those particular areas. And again, whatever you guys have in mind in terms of, this is the area that I keep hearing about it. Maybe it's GDPR, something that, is just gnawing at you. No matter how many times you read an internet article or you go to a vendor website, you still don't get it. My goal when we have somebody on the show is like, explain it for the person that anybody who's in this industry should be able to understand it. Break it down to be simple, but then go ahead and get into kind of the deeper stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point, where we try to seek out folks who are experts on that to help us understand and articulate that, because communication is such an important part of any IAM program. If you can't communicate what the problem is, how you're going to solve it, what are the benefits, you're going to have a really hard time being successful as an IM program. Whatever piece you play within that program itself, you have to be able to communicate, those fundamental things. So being able to distill complex things down into, let's call it executive speak, right? Simplify things and be able to, get points across quickly, I think is an important part. And I know we've got, you mentioned open banking, you mentioned FIDO, we've got some guests that are coming up here over the next few weeks, people like Jackson Shaw, who's a product management executive with a ton of experience in IM space. We're going to have a conversation with Darren Rolls, who used to be a CTO over at SailPoint. So he's got a ton of experience. We've got Mark Perry, who is the Asia Pacific CTO for Ping. And I know he's working on open banking, I believe, down there. And he's also given a couple Identiverse presentations over the next few weeks. Someone from FIDO, right? We're not sure who yet, but we're looking at getting someone from the FIDO Alliance, on to kind of talk about, what that is and how it can benefit. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us all to grow and, get smarter, and the bar continually moves up, and you have to keep pace with things. Otherwise you get left behind.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things too. It's like, we're not going to be, even though we've been in the space for 15 years, it's evolving so quickly. And what's also happening is that it's growing horizontally and vertically. So, it's easier to stay up to date vertically within your space, I think. Like, okay, I have the fundamentals of TCP/IP, I have the fundamentals of LDAP directory, I have the fundamentals of, access management. But what's also happening within IAM is that new things are starting to come within the fold, and it's, things like user behavior analytics, and, obviously some of the things that have been around like for a while, like privileged access management, but then they start to lead into new areas like DevOps or DevSecOps and getting your arms around that. And, even though I think we are conversational on all of these topics, it's better to just get somebody who lives it, who can really just, put a spotlight on it. And, one of the other things I like doing is that when we get one of these experts and we get somebody who's got a C in their title, or even if they don't, even if they're just like, or even not just, but they're people who have, excelled within their vertical. Somebody like Helio, who we had on to talk about role mining. We always start off with, well, how did you get into IAM? So somebody who's out there who's listening to our podcast, who they see Helio and they say, that guy's doing what I would like to do with my career. Or they see, Eve Mailer, CTO at a major software company. What was her career progression? And that's one of the things we always start off with people. I think that's such a cool thing to do is, just understand, like, what was the path that you took?
It's a big world, lots of different ways to get where you want to go. And some of them are planned and some are, unplanned and unorthodox, but there's a lot of different ways to kind of work through that. So,
right.
So maybe we look back, kind of quickly about some of the conversations that we've had over our first year. I know I have a few favorites, and they're all our babies, right? So all of our children are special. Some children are more special than others, though. And I think my favorite episode that we did was the Family Feud one that we did with the Identity team back in November, when we had a all hands get together in Florida. And back in the day, right, when we could travel and Florida wasn't COVID central. So I think that was by far the most fun experience I've had with the show. It was not well produced, I don't think. I think it was very rocky technically, right? And I think we were kind of figuring out it's the first and still only show that we actually recorded live with an audience. And, we're doing it in a hotel conference room, and, the audio equipment. I'm not an expert on that, at least wasn't at that point. Trying to figure out, how to route things and get things recorded and, still have it, be suitable for a podcast. But, working with the Identity team and coming up with some of the questions and getting all the responses for the Family Feud game was just a lot of fun. And then, having conducted the show. And I know that you were sweating bullets, right? Because I was actually hosting it, and poor Jim, you're sitting there back there with at least 2, maybe 3 different computers trying to run the game on a big screen in the room, right? Trying to interpret the answers as our judge and just kind of keep pace with things. So I thought you did, just one heck of a job with it, but
well, thank you.
It was fun.
I mean, if people haven't listened to that episode, I think it's a fun one to listen to. I mean, Jeff, you put a ton of work into that. I was kind of surprised it turned out as well as it did, from the standpoint that, it was as different from the rest of our episodes as you could possibly get. And with me running the controls, I know I did the best I could, but it wasn't very smooth. And the other thing is, like, if people are listening and they're like, why isn't Jim talking? Well, that's why. Because like I had my nose in like 3 different laptops, like Jeff said.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. I had a good time with that one. I think, I think we'd like to do kind of stuff like that in the future. And, maybe there's an opportunity that we can do some, live streaming or things like that and kind of figure out, what that participation looks like. But, maybe it's something that we can think about for the future.
Yeah.
Trying to think what other episodes I think stuck out. I think the Gartner ones stick out just because they're so prevalent from a, mind share perspective. So things that we did around the IGA report in October when they come out with their Magic Quadrant, and then the recap that we did of the conference in December, late last year, 2019, I think were good too. I like going to conferences and being able to recap them for people who aren't able to go, or if we're looking for, a quick synopsis. I think that's, something that provides value and, keeps us honest too when we're looking for good content out there, and, what conferences are worth attending, et cetera. Would have liked to have done it for Identiverse this year, especially being in Denver, but that didn't take place. So now it's virtual. So I'm sure we'll have some, conversations around some of the virtual presentations that will come out of that. And I know we've got, I talked about Mark Perry, right? He's giving a couple Identiverse presentations, so we'll have him on. But I think that was another one that I think that stuck out for me.
That's probably the biggest thing I miss about business travel is the conference circuit, and especially now with the podcast. But I think in 2021, there's so many things, are back to normal, and there are conferences and things like that, we're going to be able to do even more with those conferences relative to the podcast. And yeah, I mean, I really miss, that's one of the things I really miss. But I think that, I mean, what we tended to do was do a prep, hey, looking at the schedule, this is what we're going to try and hit. And that spurred all kinds of conversation. And after the fact, do kind of a review. I think the thing that we could do in addition to that would be spot interviews. Like maybe we could, do a few short segments with people who are there at the conference, whether they've been on the show in the past or not, and just spend, 10, 15 minutes talking with those folks, and then try and have them back for like a more in-depth, I don't know. I mean, I think we can make the most out of it though.
Yeah, that might be an opportunity to do something, live at a conference as well, right? Having those conversations with folks who are there, and we're all in the same boat, together
Right.
from an identity perspective. So, maybe that's a way we can figure something out again once that picks up again.
Exactly.
We had a few guests, I think, this year that really kind of, I thought, were really great. People like Richard Bird and Eve Mailer. I know we had Paul Voloshin on as well, and Luis Almeida. And these are people who have a lot of great insight into particular areas, things like privacy, UMA, server security. Luis, who kind of has done it all from a IAM perspective. So, I think those conversations were interesting. You kind of get to know some of the people in the industry and, what their experience and what their journey has been through the wonderful world and the sexy world of identity access management.
So sexy.
Yeah. I think that was our second episode, right? The sexy world of IAM, something along those lines.
I think the second episode was you and Fletcher.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was. I think you were on vacation that week. So we pulled in Fletcher from Identropy to help pinch hit as we were still figuring things out at that point. It took a few episodes to kind of figure out, how to make this happen. Like I said, we were learning on the fly, and I think we've come a long way and still plenty of ways to go. That's for sure.
Yes, absolutely.
So what are some of the things that people can kind of look for in the future as we continue to do the show?
So these are maybes.
Maybe. Yes, these are
So
all subject
what?
to change. These are like patch notes, right? They are subject to change until they are actually in place in production.
Right. Yeah. And one of our listeners in Europe actually works for IBM. Recommended that we go into live streams or play with live streams. So we haven't figured out how exactly to do that. And Jeff and I were talking about it a little bit before we started recording. So there's technical challenges with live streams for sure. But the biggest challenge would be we don't want to have a live stream and have nobody connecting. So I think what we have to do is throw it out there that if we had a live stream, you know, would people would people connect to it and submit questions as we were going? And it could be kind of a fun just do a Q&A based on the questions that were coming in. But obviously, if only 3 or 4 people connect and they don't submit questions, it's not going to make for a great live stream.
Right. Or if it's a bunch of like bots, right? They're
Right.
just spamming things out there. So I think it's
And
an interesting idea. And I think, it's something that, heck, we'll give it a shot and see how it works, kind of find the right opportunity for it. I like the conference idea. I think that's maybe easier to kind of tackle at the first kind of live way to do it. But maybe there's a better way we can do it. Maybe we'll just go on Twitch and just stream us playing video games and talking about IAM.
what video game will we play?
I don't know. I mean, I play League of Legends probably the most, but I could tell you that audience can be very toxic sometimes. So I don't know if that would be good. I'm up for anything.
My kids play Fortnite.
Of course they do. Everyone plays Fortnite.
So if I was going to play a video game online, I think it would be chess.
Mm-hmm.
It'd have to go
Chess
like
is big.
super slow. Is it?
There is a chess section on Twitch, that's for sure. So maybe we can do some sort of like IAM themed chess, right?
IAM theme words with friends.
Ooh, I like that. I know we want to get into some more conversations around the consumer or customer side of identity access management. We've had some conversations around it, but I think that's something that continues to grow, especially as a lot of economies and businesses start to shift what may have been traditionally, brick and mortar into e-commerce, especially
Right.
pandemic related, those sorts of things, and kind of the associated digital transformation that typically accompanies that.
The other thing in full transparency, so we have some level of dashboard capability to see which episodes have a lot of listeners and how long they've been listened to. I don't think the stats are very I don't know. I just don't know if I feel like I can trust them because when we went into like the Apple statistics, it was like rock bottom, but then the Spotify were pretty high. So I don't know if like the aggregation of that is something we can rely on. But that's how we kind of led to this one around customer IAM and digital transformation, is that when we've had those topics, those episodes have tended to get pretty good listenership.
And I think a lot of it's cyclical too, right? I mean, as different trends are kind of going around, it might have been hot, a year ago, and who knows what's going to be a year from now, right? So it's something that we keep an eye on.
The other thing was like right as the pandemic kind of took hold, I think people stopped driving, and if that's one of the main times I would listen to podcasts, would be in the car. And if you're not using the car as much anymore, or your kids are always in the car with you, I mean, I'm sure most kids want to listen to this podcast, but
oh yeah, totally. Yeah, IAM is definitely family friendly, right?
Family friendly.
The conversation.
Hey, it helps people fall asleep apparently.
I'll take it. Those are listening. We want to get more guests on here. Obviously, people will have different perspectives in IAM and other areas of IT, because IAM does cover quite a bit, right? So it's not just identity governance, which maybe some people kind of associate with IAM, or it's just, hey, let's automate account creation. There's so much more to it.
Yeah, I think areas like DevOps, for example, it's an error. This has been my perspective is when I got into IT in the mid to late 90s, it was like servers in your data center. And even as things started to shift into the cloud, it was still servers and automation meant what it meant. But now with kind of the automation that is capable in terms of deploying infrastructure, deploying applications to infrastructure, and that infrastructure not even being servers. What I'm talking about there is things you can do with Docker. People may not even have a firm grasp on how all that works. Again, we want the podcast to be educational, so we can get somebody who can come on and talk about it. And I forget what the name of the movie was, but there was gosh, I can't even remember the name of the actor. It wasn't. Anyway, he used to say, "Explain it to me like I'm in fifth grade," or "Explain it to me like I'm a 10-year-old," or something like that. But that's the kind of level of explanation I'd like to get to.
Yeah, and I think that, also talking about things like different white papers, reports, webinars, things like that, getting those authors online to help explain kind of their findings and what is they're trying to get out there. So I think that's something that we're looking at as well. So
Yeah,
I know this has run a little bit long, and I said I didn't want to turn this into an infomercial for for any particular thing, but maybe we should start to wrap up. Maybe some of the things that we'd like to get from the audience. Right? It's if you're listening, what shows do you like best? Drop us a line at identitycenter.com. Let us know some topics that you'd like us to tackle. I think that's the easiest way to do it. We've talked about maybe doing like versus episodes, which I don't know how that would work and maintain relationships, but I don't know how that would work, but I think it would be an interesting concept, right? To kind of take a debate style approach to maybe some of these topics and see what comes out of it. Hopefully in a safe and respectful manner. So we'd have to try to figure out what that would look like. But yeah, so happy birthday to us. We're 1 year old. Light the candle and the cake, play the happy birthday song. Jim and I plan on doing this for a while, and kind of go from there. But visit the new website, identitycenter.com. Drop us a note on the contact, subscribe, listen, share with friends, leave reviews. All that stuff helps us out quite a bit. And be sure to follow us on Twitter, because I'd like to try to take advantage of that more and, be more engaging with our listeners and, get feedback from folks and use that for polls and so forth. Anything you want to bring up, Jim, before we call it a week?
I hope everyone has a great 4th of July. I mean, that's Independence Day in the United States, or I think almost every country has some kind of holiday around this time of year. So hopefully everybody has a good time with their family and get some relaxation in.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because one of the things that we've noticed from a listenership perspective is we're Jim and I are definitely US based, and 2/3 of our audience comes from the US, but we have a big global following as well. 1/3 of our listeners are all around are not in the US, right? Globally. So more global themes and topics, and try to talk about some of the differences in the different regions. So, if there's things that are happening in your region of the world that have a relation to identity and access management, let us know about it so that we can take a look at it and see how we can maybe bring it up as part of the show. That would be great. So I think with that, we're going to go ahead and call it a week, and appreciate everyone listening. Hope you like the new website, and we'll be talking with y'all in the next one. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
You've been listening to the Identity at the Center podcast. For more episodes, visit identityatthecenter.com.